he would know things about it, but no one else. So, because this is meant to be sort of history, archaeology talk.
Where's the role play?
What?
Welcome class to semester 2.
Right.
Classics 1B.
Classics 1, well, it would have been 1A, but to be fair, sanctuaries is probably too complicated a subject for first years. So you would be doing
Right, so basically, chat,
an honours
what
module.
we're saying is that first years who intend to study this don't understand it, so you're not going to.
No, you will understand it because I've made a pretty straightforward PowerPoint presentation.
Read pleb proof.
Yeah. So, get down. Sorry, that's the dog. Okay. So the reason.
Kira! Hey, you come over here then. Idiot.
I know, she's an idiot. So
she's incredibly
I like the idea of what?
It's just the noises she's making.
I know. Greek sanctuaries, how they came into existence. So, in other words, how space became sacred, and we're not. And this is for Rich. We're not meaning outer space, okay?
That is the quality of humor you can appreciate from this stream coming up. Zeus hold me, yeah, something like that.
Okay, so that sacred spaces in ancient Greeks. The reason I've put this up because our pals across the water don't always know where things are in Europe, although Jack did point out that although this is Greece, can't really see where Greece is, but I think if we pull up a Google map of some sort,
Kira,
you will see where Greece is.
I'm gonna have to take a short break in the lecture to put this dog out in the hall. Come on, you. Come on.
Right, the dog's getting away. Right, she's getting put away. She's being a pest. Okay, so what? Oh no, I need to wait. Hang on.
Because the dog hasn't moved.
The dog hasn't moved, so she knows you're trying to put her out.
Come on.
Oh my God, poor animal. Wait, out, Kira. There she goes. Oh no. Right, we'll see this drama playing out. Out. Right, okay. Yes, Rich, I'm sorry. Exam grade 10 out of 10. No, no one's getting an exam. Although I did do one. I did do an exam on sacred spaces. Right, so.
I'm getting puppy dog eyes.
Yeah. Okay, so what do we mean when we say what's a sacred space? So what you have to think about
anywhere where I currently am.
Yeah, that too, and so it can be a natural setting, but it's more likely to be a liminal space. And what we mean is that.
So, teacher assistant drift is making the class unbearable. Will exam be graded on a 10 of 10?
No, we're not getting an exam. Right, so a liminal space in nature can be anything.
This lecture was a good idea on paper. Will be allowed breaks during the lecture?
Oh my God, it's not going to be that long. We everyone just calm down and sit down and just take a drink or whatever. Right, so a liminal space in the landscape associated with the divine. Yes. So, springs, caves, mountaintops. So that is something that is a defined space within the landscape. It can also be a man-made space, a sanctuary, an open-air altar, or a temple. And I'll give you examples of that later on. But we find some ideas about ritual and what happens within a ritual space that, for example, people always quote this example from the Odyssey. The travelers came to Pylos. Now that would be here in the bottom somewhere. This is why I need Ferd, right? And
what would Ferd do?
He would confirm. Yeah. Where they found people.
They're not. This isn't this is some sort of anti-vaxxer. We're just gonna no, you're wrong.
Yeah. So where people are sacrificing bulls to Poseidon. Lord of the earthquake, da da da. So the reason they're at the seashore is because Poseidon is the god of the sea. But Poseidon is also associated with bulls. So the space itself, the actual ritual might be more important than the space. Well, that would have been in before classical times, right? And I'll show you a bit of because the Odyssey and the Iliad are attributed to a poet called Homer, although there are
Homer Simpson.
Yeah, Homer's that one. Who there are people, there are divided opinions whether Homer was an actual person, and whether he actually composed the Odyssey and the Iliad, or whether he merely wrote it down from
Will lecture notes be available
Oh.
after?
oral tradition.
Okay, one thing I will say, I'm going to try and keep the VOD, and I might put the VOD on YouTube.
The what?
The VOD.
Oh, the VOD.
Recording.
Whatever
video.
that is. Right, okay.
It's the video of the, it's the stream.
Oh, the stream video. Right, okay, right, fine. So, I don't know where I was now. So the Odyssey and Iliad being composed by Homer. So they came from an oral tradition, and it was.
Was Homer a very sexual person?
No one knows who Homer
Yeah,
was. If he
no.
was indeed a
I
person.
think you're missing homosexual.
Oh, I see. For God's sake. Right, class, pay attention. Right, none of that, please.
Just to be clear, I absolutely was. Certainly in tutorials, the kid who would make jokes all
Oh,
the
right.
time.
Oh, I
and derail
see.
shit.
Yeah, right.
Uh,
So you get the idea what a sacred space can be.
assistant ruining the lecture, man.
Right. So it can be a space in the landscape that is in some way liminal. It can be the ritual itself, or it can be a man-made space, right? So when we talk about sacred spaces, bear that in mind. So how do we know why some, or how can we tell why some spaces become sacred? So there are natural spaces thought to be the home of the divine. So as I said, that association of Poseidon with the sea, so therefore you sacrifice to Poseidon at the seaside. That makes sense.
Sacrifice what?
Bulls.
Why?
Why a bull, or
Yeah.
why any animal?
Well, both. Why are we sacrificing bulls, and why are we sacrificing anything?
Bulls are associated with Poseidon, but they could also sacrifice bulls to other gods. But more often than not, what we think happens in one of these things, rituals, is that the animal gets sacrificed, whether it's a bull or something else.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry to interrupt, but Richard just pointed something out that's making me laugh, which is, why are the bullet points different sizes?
Yeah, I don't know. It's something happened there, and I think this is because this is the main point. So the possible reasons are, this is a sub point: natural place to be the home of the divine, links with myth, links with the past, links with the activity of men, links to the emergent polis, is town, right? So it's illustrated by so these are the two main, and then this is sub points. That's why they're separate. That's why they're smaller.
Right, back on bulls. So to
Bulls,
speak.
right? So when an animal is sacrificed, they cut up the animal and then they roast the meat, and the meat's eaten by the persons doing the sacrificing. So
what you call sacrifice, I call a barbecue.
A barbecue, right? But
Okay.
the bones and the fat, the bones get wrapped up in the fat, put on the altar to be burned, and the fumes or the smoke that goes up into the sky, that's the sacrifice, that's the ritual, because it reaches the gods.
So I can blame Poseidon for global warming, is what you're telling me.
Right. So what we're saying is it's the smoke that rises up. That's the actual sacrifice.
So
to
the
the gods.
sacrifice. So Poseidon wanted us
No.
to create global warming.
No, not any god. Any god. You can sacrifice that to any god.
That's even worse. The entire Greek pantheon's responsible for
It's
global
responsible
warming.
for that, clearly. So, but what you do have to remember is that sacrificing an animal like a bull was a huge deal, because these animals represented a certain amount of wealth, right? It's not like the herds might, for somebody to sacrifice a big animal like a bull is a big deal. So
Right.
that it wouldn't be doing that every 2 minutes.
So that's like it's like I don't know. It's like sacrificing a TV. In modern terms, I
Well,
guess
I
something
suppose.
like that.
Now the links with
Well, apparently, apparently, most people want to sacrifice poons. Can we
Right.
sacrifice poons?
Yeah,
Is
we
that
can
possible?
try.
The-
So the
Okay, we now have a teacher who's like, you know how you go into like a physics lecture and they'll do a demonstration of like how motion is conserved and all that by like swinging a ball. Mum's demonstration is going to be sacrificing one of her students to Poseidon.
No, of course not. Right. So the links with myth are interesting. So we'll come back to the Horion at Samos. Now Samos is supposed to be the birthplace of Hera, the goddess Hera. So that's where there's a huge sanctuary of Hera on Samos. Samos is one of the Greek islands, etc. So there's also a temple of Apollo at Dinama. Now that's meant to be the mating place of Zeus and Leto. Now Zeus came to Leto, who's the mother of Apollo and Artemis, because they're twins, and Zeus came to Leto as a swan. And that's how they make.
What?
Yes, as a swan, and that's how. So sometimes on Greek vase paintings, you'll see Leto and the swan, and Zeus is the swan. Zeus did all sorts of things.
I thought Leto was the swan.
No.
You said Leto came to Zeus as a swan.
No, Zeus came to Leto as a swan. Zeus came to. Oh, this is where I need third. So he did all sorts of things. He came to you hear of Europa and the.
I mean, I can't be the only one. Like, I'm asking questions like that I would assume you guys would want to ask. Zeus was a swan.
Yeah.
Zeus could just become a swan. But why? Okay, so is this what I've been getting wrong in my love life, that I haven't been approaching women covered in feathers?
Yeah.
And,
or
kind of like snapping at them?
also Europa and the bull. Now can't remember if that's Zeus or probably is Zeus. Comes to Europa as a bull. He abducts Europa, and then mates with her as a bull. He mates.
What is wrong with this dude?
He mates with now. I can't remember, but there's one woman he mates with. He comes to the woman as a golden shower.
No, stop a minute. That doesn't mean. Do you mean what I think that?
No,
means?
it's not meant. It's not meant to be. It's not meant to be semen, but it's meant to be a golden
No.
shower.
Hold on. No, okay. A few problems with this. One. No, a lot of problems with this. Okay, no. Let's break this down. Right. One. What I meant by golden shower was urine. Two.
No.
Why did you think semen?
Well, because
Three,
he
what semen
fertilizes
is
the
golden?
No, well, I don't know. But the woman gets pregnant because he comes to her in a golden shower. Now I can't remember who this.
Why did they? What was a golden shower?
I don't
The
know.
only golden shower I've ever heard of.
That's the myth. Right, shut up a sec. Right, let's go on to the next.
No one knows where we were on this. Everyone's mind, I can guarantee you, has been completely blown by Zeus being a fucking swan and shagging somebody, a bull and shagging somebody. It's fertilizing golden showers. This is what this is now about for the next few minutes.
No.
Well,
the thing is,
you can't just go, okay, next sanctuary point. We have a lot of explanation to do.
Right, so Zeus basically is all powerful. He's the king of the gods.
Right, and
he
the king
can
of the
do what
gods
he wants.
but what he chooses to do is be a swan and shag someone.
He mates with mortal women, and that's why you get half gods.
But why does he mate with mortal women?
Well, who knows? The gods misbehave. Like the gods misbehave the same as humans. So in Greek mythology, the pantheon of gods, they quarrel, they fall out, they misbehave, they do things they're not supposed to be doing. It's essentially a mirror of the human world.
I mean, that's actually the same in Norse mythology as well.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah, so okay, well, I would suggest like going back and rounding up the point of the slide before, because I certainly am fucking lost.
Right, no. So the only thing is why do we think some spaces become sacred? Right. So we have the natural places thought to be the home of the divine. So like river gods live in the river. Right.
Shocker.
Nymphs. Well, you get the hot springs are associated with nymphs.
Nymphs?
Nymphs. Right.
I like nymphs.
The mountaintops are associated with Zeus. Oh God, this descending into chaos. Right, and then there are
Like
some places.
Imagine, like, I'm sorry, but imagine the fucking ruler of the gods. Like, where is he? He was supposed to be here. Where the fuck did he go? I can suddenly see a giant serpent down on Earth approaching a young woman. I guess that's this.
Right, you say that, but the
Please
mother.
tell me he wasn't actually a giant serpent at one point.
The mother of Alexander the Great kept.
Was a giant serpent?
No, said that Alexander was the son of Zeus.
Of course.
Because Zeus had come to her as a snake.
I was kidding.
No, that is a thing.
It's not a thing.
Yes, she said Zeus impregnated her as a snake.
I'm not saying she didn't say it.
Oh, right.
I'm saying it's not a thing.
Well, it was a thing for her. I mean, she was a slightly mad woman.
You think?
But so, yeah.
She thought the god of gods had come down as a snake, and impregnated her.
And given her a son, yes.
And you think she might have been a bit mad?
A bit mad, yes. What was her name? I can't think of it at the moment. Right, okay. So, right. Where am I now? This thing is gone.
It's on the right-hand side.
Oh, no. Oh, yes, here. Okay, so when we think of man-made spaces, we think of sanctuaries and temples. Sanctuary stroke temple, I should have
We have an actual question, by the way.
Okay, which
Back
is?
on Alexander.
Oh.
Alexander the Great later tried to tie himself in the Egyptian mythos. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, that's right. So he came from Macedonia into the area of what's that called, where Turkey is nowadays.
Turkey?
Down the way. Yeah. No, down the way. I can't think of it. You're putting me off. No, that's much later.
Well, okay, well, I don't know what's
right. So it's not Levant. Then they drop down to the Levant.
2,500 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, no, doesn't matter. And then it goes into Egypt. Now, when he comes into Egypt, he goes off to the sanctuary at Siwa. Now, oh God, if I had a map. But anyway, so you kind of go where the Nile Delta is. Go to the east.
Temp is very sure it's Asia Minor.
Asia Minor, correct. Yes, well done. And he goes to the
What a fucking teacher's pet, by the way.
he goes to the oracle at Siwa, who's an oracle of Zeus. And when he arrives there, allegedly the priest greets him by saying, Alexander, the son of Zeus, blah de blah. So there are coins, for example, when Alexander has these ram's horns that are associated with Siwa. So yes, he does, and he ties himself in. But then in Egypt, it was normal because the pharaohs were always thought to be the living god. Right?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, so pharaohs meant, and they usually married their sister, because they want to keep the bloodline pure.
Oh no.
Yes, and then that's where you get abomination. Well, not abomination.
What about what if they didn't have a sister? Would they marry like a stepsister?
Probably, or yeah, because the king would have many wives.
Right.
You know, so.
Okay.
Right, but that's Egyptology. Egypt, not really my thing. I only really know a little bit from when Rome conquers Egypt.
Did their stepsister ever get stuck in like random household objects?
No, I don't know what that's referring to. Right? Can we go on and see what's a sanctuary? What do we mean when we say sanctuary? What? So a sanctuary. So it is a place that's separated from the ordinary world, literally by walls. Or sometimes it can be a grove of some kind, where a person meets the divine. Now, when we think about religion, and we are in the Western world, are so used to a priest, so you have a relation with God, but you don't have a direct relationship with God. You have a direct relationship. The priest is the intermediate.
Well, that's very Catholic, though.
Well, okay, so
the Protestants don't say that.
Do they have a personal relationship with God? Are you allowed to just... So in ancient world, if you could... Well, first of all, there is a whole plethora of gods to choose from.
The religion is not the only one.
No, I know. But...
It's like
all I'm trying to say is,
or whatever.
all I'm trying to say here is that in the ancient world, there was a far more direct relationship with you. There is an idea that if you you make sacrifices to a god. Well, say I'm a woman, so and Hera is the goddess of childbirth and of marriage. So I would make sacrifices to Hera, and then you build up kudos, as it were, so that when you're in trouble, you then say, Hera, if any of the sacrifices I ever made for you were pleasing to you, can you please do X, Y, or Z for me now? And that's the kind of language is used also in the Odyssey and the Iliad. You see people saying, if what I did was pleasing to you, you need to help me now.
So, when you're making a sacrifice, right? How, like, did people just say this is a sacrifice for Billy, or was there like a symbol? Like, so, like, did you have a symbol of Hera with you when you would sacrifice the Hera?
But we'll come back to that, but because I have some examples of sacrifices. So there is
the oracles of Delphi were supposed to be the voice of gods. I don't know who they are.
Yes, that Delphi is the oracle of Apollo.
Right.
So
Delphi.
Delphi, yeah.
I thought you said Elphi.
No, Delphi. Delphi is.
Kung Fu is an entirely serious-looking question. Is it true that Driftbling got his nickname from Hermes, who's named the divine drifter of bling in British mythology?
No.
Okay.
Hermes was the messenger of the gods. You see him portrayed with little wings on his shoes because he was meant to be so fast.
I know you know, so don't answer. Here's a question for you, chat. So obviously the Romans kind of yoinked all the Greek gods really and renamed them.
Yeah.
So which Roman gods, or what's the Roman god name equivalent
of
Hermes? You know that. I don't say it, but
I know it.
Of course you know it. I'm asking them.
I don't know if I know it.
You don't know it?
No. Who do you think it is?
Well, is it not Mercury?
Is it though?
Yeah.
It could be. I'm not entirely sure.
Because there's the messenger that goes around the sun, right? And
yeah.
That's why that planet got called that.
Oh, I see. Well, no, I think that the sun god's called Helios.
I didn't say the sun. Also, Notice is confirmed that Mercury. Notice also thinks Mercury.
Oh, I see. Because it got back. Okay, fine.
Points for Notice.
0
points for Driftmum.
0 points for me. I used to be really good at mythology, but I kind of forgotten. It's so long ago.
I always remember the bit in Hercules.
Oh.
When they're renaming all the gods.
Yes.
Because the Romans
Pluto.
don't like this. And like, everyone was happy with their new name, apart from Pluto. I wouldn't call my dog Pluto.
That's true. Poor Hades.
Hades is a lot cooler name than Pluto. I have to be.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So
going back. So the question I'd asked a second ago before we go back to this was on the sacrifice, and so how do you identify that this sacrifice is specifically for this?
So what you have to think, the bull thing is obviously not a normal sacrifice. That is a big deal, and there's lots of people that come and eat the meat and all the rest of it. So probably done by a chieftain or ruler of some sort. Ordinary people could bring things to the temple, right? So or any kind of sanctuary. So you would maybe, if you were an ordinary person, you might bring a dove, or
which you've captured.
Yeah, or you could bring. I mean, there's lots of different things like pine cones or minerals of some sort.
Pine cones.
Yes, because ordinary people don't have tons and tons of money. The elite.
Yes, I get that, but you can't just pick up something in a forest and say,
"Yeah,
look,
you
it's a
can.
sacrifice."
You would bring it, and then what happens is they put them on the altars or near the altars, and every so often the priest would come and sweep the whole thing out, and they would throw them in a pit. Right? Now, the reason we have quite good evidence for this is that at the Horion at Samos, when they were excavating there, they found a waterlogged deposit. And when a deposit, see, we need third. When a deposit is waterlogged, a lot of natural materials are kept.
Okay,
because it's an anti.
I have an alternative theory.
Right.
What if the pine cone just got in there at some point?
No. Well, but not if it's found in association with other things that were likely. So, for example, what are these fruits called with all the little seeds? Pomegranates. Pomegranates are usually associated with fertility.
Was that a mime of you spitting it?
Yeah. So they are associated with fertility. So you might bring a gift of a fruit to the temple. And then so when we find the deposit, waterlogged deposit, which keeps all the organic materials intact, and they find things like pine cones. They find like pine cones made from, people make pine cones from rocks to present at the temple as a gift to the gods. So we also sometimes, offering usually is the sacrifice of an animal, but the other gifts are called votives. Right. And the elite would put massive statues as votives, outlining the sacred way leading up to the temple. But ordinary people also bring little gifts, but they are not wealthy, so they bring what they can. Okay, and I'll give you some more examples there.
A quick couple of follow-ups from chat.
Right.
One I find quite funny is giving a stone pine cone that can't be burnt is kind of trolling, isn't it? But
no, but it's people. Nobody is making a judgment on what you bring. The only person that is making the judgment would be the divine, the person, the God that you're giving this to.
Well, given what you've told me about the divine so far, they seem like they probably would be quite a judgmental lot. What the fuck is this?
Yeah.
This is what you're getting. Fuck you, Mortal, like throws it back at you. But the other thing, so Notice asks, would a bull sacrifice be during times when natural disasters are common, like seasonal storms or fires?
It's possible. I mean, one of the big sacrifices, the biggest sacrifice you could give a god is your child. Right now, there isn't a lot of evidence for child sacrifice. There is oh God, I'm off my thing now. Of my strike. So there is sacrifice in other religions, but what we do have in the Odyssey is when Agamemnon, the king of kings, right? So you have in Greece all these little cities that have their own king. They all come together because they're going to go and take Helen back from Troy, right? Who was the wife of Menelaus, who is the brother of Agamemnon. Agamemnon was the king of kings. Menelaus is the king of Sparta, right? So they all aggregate together and get ready to sail and go sail to Troy is in Asia Minor, so they get ready to sail to Troy, and the winds get up. The wind keeps coming up and coming, and they can't sail. They're sitting on the sea ready to go, and they're frustrated because they can't go because there's all these storms. So Agamemnon then decides to sacrifice his daughter Iphigenia, right, to Poseidon to placate him so that the sea becomes calm again.
Seems a bit extreme. You could just wait for it to blow
over. Yes, but there we go. So this idea of sacrificing, it can be to placate the gods. So perhaps in times of stress, and that's what we think when we look at oh God, what is my?
I don't know why you're looking at me.
I know. The Punic. What's that city? What am I thinking of? Oh my God.
Boston.
Because Rome. No, Rome, and across the way was in modern Tunisia. No, Morocco. No, Tunisia. Oh, that's just so bad.
Carthage?
Yes, Carthage. Thank you. So at Carthage, for example, there is a cemetery whereby they think urns with burnt remains of children are placed. Remember we went to Sardinia and we went to the Tophos there. It's called the Tophos, where all the little urns were. That was obviously a sort of restaging of what it would have looked like.
Someone's saying the whole dude burning his daughters like Stannis in Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. So, you know, there's nothing new under the sun kind of thing. Because, I mean, supposedly the Odyssey and Iliad were committed to paper 700 BC-ish. Right?
So basically we're saying George R. R. Martin's a fucking fraud.
Well, yeah, and as is that other woman, the Potter woman as well, taken from all sorts of myths from all over the place.
Well, that's what you always moan that Shakespeare did that, right?
No, Shakespeare subverted Plutarch. So Plutarch writes the lives. He wrote series of lives, and so you have the life of, I don't know, all sorts of Greeks and Romans, and very often he did parallel lives. So he
when's he gonna write about me?
he's long deed. He paralleled a Roman and a Greek. So I think there's not many of them that have survived, but I think the one of Mark Antony, and was it Agesilaus? I think that one survived. So yeah, we had that, the Greek lives. But yeah, so that a lot of the stuff from Shakespeare has been taken from that, nicked. But then you have to understand that the classical authors, for some long time, what we call the Dark Ages, these things were sort of lost. And a lot of them came back because of Arabic writings. So they had kind of copied the Greek and the Roman classics.
Right.
And then there's also stuff found all the time. So you get the Dead Sea Scrolls, and a lot of stuff was retrieved. But there were big libraries. So there was a huge library at Alexandria in Egypt. When was the sea alive?
When was the sea alive?
The sea?
Yes.
Alive?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
The Dead Sea.
Oh, the Dead Sea. Why the Dead Sea? Right? The Dead Sea is called the Dead Sea because it's not connected to any other sea. It's an inland sea. I suppose it just really is a big lake, but it's salt water. Right. It's salt water and has a very high salt content, so you drift.
Is there any chance that was done intentionally by people?
Doubt it. I don't know.
How did it happen then?
I don't know. It was just an inland sea. Oh, how did it? Well, probably during the Ice Age or something. Who knows? I'm not a geologist. Look, I'm not all-knowing, right? We're talking about sanctuaries. Okay, so what is a sanctuary? A place separated from the ordinary world where a person could encounter the divine.
What I should have done would have been really funny is I should have gone back a slide and see if you noticed.
I would notice, of course. Of course. So the other thing to bear in mind is that natural phenomena were associated or attributed to actions of God. So we have to think, for example, lightning is Zeus throwing a thunderbolt, right? And rivers are articulated as divine because they could fall dry and all these kind of, because people didn't understand these natural phenomena like lightning, like thunder, like storms. The sea is rough. Oh, that's Poseidon is angry about something we've done. Right, we don't understand weather patterns and all the rest of it. So
back in the Greek days is that we haven't shagged males enough. Now,
probably.
In the Christian faith, we've shagged too many males.
Probably. Right. This is more my thing now. How do we recognize a sacred space? Because obviously, it's all very well talking about. So text, we see things being mentioned in the Iliad, in the Odyssey, in some of the Greek plays that have survived, in some of the histories that have survived, Herodotus, etc. Some places are still extant, so they're still standing. You can see what they look like, or may have looked like, because a lot of them have obviously not, or have been reduced to small walls, as Jack can attest. There are places in Greece, like in Athens, we have the Acropolis, where all the temples have survived, kind of intact. A lot of stuff is taken away. A lot of the friezes are in the British Museum. The metopes are in the British Museum. Some of them are, not all of them, etc., etc. And in the archaeological record, what we look for is evidence of sacrifice. So we're looking for animal bones that are still whole. Well, that can be sacrifice. That can be evidence of feasting. Part burned bones, possibly sacrifices.
Isn't that a fairly flawed sign, considering that could also be like I don't know what you'd call it for like Greeks, but like a public feasting house.
Well,
you know
if you
like
if you feast,
like a
you don't burn the bones, right? You feast, you eat, throw the bones to the dogs, right?
Okay.
You don't sit and burn them. We can have evidence of offerings in the
What if
form
you're
of
not a normal child and you do sit and burn them?
food, or and evidence of libation. Now, libation is very simple. We have a cup of wine. Okay, you watching this?
Mm-hmm.
We have a cup of wine, and we go like this. We spill some onto the ground. That's the libation to the gods. That action of doing that.
Do you know what might interest you? Something you might not know. That's still a thing in a different way. Now, something that people do is you pour some of your drink out not for the gods but for your friends who have died.
Oh, I
or
see.
your family who's died.
Well, yeah. You see how these things sometimes, yeah. And then obviously we find evidence
Also,
of votives. Votives can be anything, little statues.
I'd just like to quickly say hello to BG Vilex and to me.
Oh, hi guys. You
BG,
kind of
BG Vilex's villa, by the way.
Yeah, I know. You kind of caught us in the middle. We're trying to identify what a sacred space is and how we look for it. So the way in the archaeological record, there's obviously, if you have a cult image, there was a big statue of the gods.
Mm-hmm.
That's more than likely has been a temple or sacred space of some kind. And ritual dining is also a thing you're talking about. So we're seeing hearths, benches, spits, cooking pots, etc., or foundation sacrifices. What that means is, when we are going to build a temple of some sort or an altar, we sacrifice an animal and we leave that as a foundation. In the foundation, we build the temple or this thing on top. So that's a foundation sacrifice. Right. So there's also, that can also sometimes be in houses. You know, how in Peru they have their ancestors buried under their house. There's evidence of that. Well, or some have mummified their ancestors and they sit in a corner. I mean, that would be, but anyway.
That's what the Omens did.
More or less. And that's
a family injury.
And that's also, but also in, what you call that? It's Psycho. You know, his mother's sitting in her seat and she's no longer alive. So, to give you an idea, I mean, I always think the time scales are important because it gives you hooks to hang things on. So when we talk about Aegean Bronze Age, we're talking 3200 BC. Now, I'm old-fashioned, right? I know they're supposed to be before current era, but I quite like BC because we know where we are. You've got the year zero. The BC goes that way. So the later you are, the earlier is in time, and AD goes that way, right? So AD goes right. So the year 1, 2, 3, 4, it adds up. BC, it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, and that goes back in time. You see what I mean?
Here's a question for you. Is the year 2000 the first year of the new millennium or the last year of the old millennium?
That's the first year of the new millennium.
I remember that was a big. I just remember this because I've been watching The West Wing with Villa, and that was a big thing. They were making a big deal of it. Toby saying that like the year, like the end of the year 1999 goes into year 2000, was the last year of this
that,
thing, and not the first year. That 2001 is the new millennium, but they're
no.
But you're disagreeing with that.
Yeah, I am.
2000.
Because you have the year 0, which is the birth of Christ, and year 1 is the year when he's a year old, right? So he's a year old, and so the 1st century BC goes from the year zip to 99 AD, right? That's the 1st century. Then starts the 2nd century. That's always quite. So if you say it's something is 1800 and something, that's the 19th century. Right. So anyway, okay. So when we talk about the Aegean Bronze Age, that's the times of the palaces like Mycenae. You get the big palace cultures Mycenae, Pylos, Philos, whatever you want to call it, things like this. This is before you get the polis like Athens, Thebes, Corinth, right? So they become cities.
Polis, can we define the word polis?
Polis just means city, effectively. It's a word for Greek word for city. So we're getting the where people live together, and in Athens we have a democratic system ish. Sparta has kings. Corinth, I think, also had a demos, you know, the people, thing of the people, what you call it, assemblies of the people. So the Aegean Bronze Age is the palace culture. Then we talk about the Iron Age, the Dark Ages it used to be called, because there was so little known about it. But we see you can be categorized by proto-geometric and geometric pottery. So before they start putting figures on pots, you get like swirly bits and that kind of thing.
Yeah, just so when it was called the Dark Age, right? Was that before things were discovered about the Bronze Age, or did we actually at a time know more about the Bronze Age than the Dark Age?
It's usually the reason you know about the Bronze Age is because of archaeology.
Yeah, no, but my point is
because there's no written evidence as yet.
Sure, but what do you understand what I'm saying? That it's weird conceptually to say that we know more about the Bronze Age than the Dark Age.
I think that is because things fell apart. So when there's a big palace at Mycenae, you know, in on Crete, there's the Minoans, and that kind of falls apart, but you don't really know why that falls apart. And then it's the same like in Europe when the Roman Empire disintegrates, you go back to clans and chieftains, that kind of thing. So small accumulations of people living together in smaller villages, in kind of clans and chieftains, as opposed to a big palace culture.
So basically America in 20 years.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, no, I didn't say that. So, and then we talk about archaic period.
He's just like...
Archaic period is from around 800 to 480. Why 480?
Because they didn't know that weed day was going to be 420.
No. What happens in 480? The Persian invasion, right? Persian War. So you get the Third Persian War.
I don't know what happened at 420 or today.
And then from after the Persians were expelled from Greece, we talk about the classical period. So the Persian Wars to 232, which is the death of Alexander. Okay. When Alexander...
Chat's trying to bail you out, by the way. She said hopefully, as in hopefully it won't be sooner.
Yes. It won't be at all. We don't want our neighbours to... Well, they're not really neighbours. They're across the Atlantic, but still. America and Britain and Europe have got a great history together. So I don't like...
Great's an interesting word.
I don't like talking about pots and just assuming people know what I'm saying. So I've put some examples. So I love material culture. This is early geometric, so you see the very simple figures and geometric rings.
So even archaeologist women are still materialistic.
Yes, of course we are. Material culture, that's where it's at. This is an archaic pot. Now you're beginning, this is Corinthian, but they see this beginning to portray animals. Now they look like, I think they're meant to be sphinxes, certainly that thing with the wings there. These are classical Athenian, this is black. This is black figure.
Shane is asking if velociraptors are going to be covered tonight or not.
Unfortunately not. I could not find pots with velociraptors. I have found pots with black figure, and this is red figure. Now the black figure is first, red figure is after, so you can see why it's a totally different technique. This is much more difficult because the figure is outlined, and it's lined in the red figure is...
The clay is red, and then
the clay is red.
What you're not depicting.
Yeah, correct. And so whereas this is just a simple, well, I say simple, but that's quite a nice job.
So we have a decent question. We also have a question from me. The question for me is, of course, a popular cultural reference, which is, do the pots ever have arms?
The pots have arms. Look, there's little pot. These are called pithoi.
Not quite what I meant. I mean, like, you know, like big chunk of
Yeah, no, these are little.
And they spin it people.
Oh, I see.
It's from a video game, Elden Ring. The actual good question was, how do they make the dyes to paint the pots?
I think some of them might be slip, but I'm not sure how they get. So these early pots, that must be ground up coals, perhaps. I'm not sure. These might be incised or just very simple with kind of brushes done. This is incised. No, that's also, these big things are what's called pithoi. So they're storage vessels. So sometimes they get buried in the ground to keep it cool. Obviously, you're talking grease.
Mm-hmm.
So they get buried in the ground and then filled either with oil or water or olives, that kind of thing. These are probably just ritual pots. Given some in Athens, they give pots for victories in games and things like that. These big, huge things.
So, well, a couple of questions from me, I guess. First, like, do you have any sort of approximations to the value of a pot in those times, and also in these early pots? Obviously, at a time like when you get to Athens or something, there were probably pot makers.
There are, and there's some, and they sign their work.
But when you go further back in time, you know, these kind of earlier pots.
No.
What's the estimate as to why people would start making them? Because like you make a simple pot, presumably for some sort of
cooking,
right? For some sort of practical use. But why then do people start engraving them?
Right. So you're talking about diversification of labor. So you can only have diversification. So diversification. No. What it means you then have artists that produce pots, right?
Yeah.
So you have to have diversification of labor. That only starts when you start having surplus foods. So you produce more. You produce food. So if you look at subsistence farming, people just make enough food for themselves. So you get, first of all, in the Stone Age, people travel around the landscape and exploit natural resources, right? So in the summer, you go and fish at the seaside, you catch birds. In the winter, you maybe follow the herd, and here in Europe, herds of deer or whatever. So they track across the landscape. People then start to become farmers, so they stay in one place. So they start to grow wheat, and they start to keep cattle or goats or sheep or whatever, and then you start to produce surplus. You produce more than you need, so you can then say to somebody, you make a pot for me and I will give you grain. So that's a barter economy.
Yeah.
And eventually throughout this, you start to see people that are having a lot more than other people. They become elite. The land, right? So for example, there's two farmers, and one has land that doesn't produce as much. So he then,
as the great Futurama joke goes, there's a hippie saying, you can't like own property, man.
No.
And then the professor responds, yes, I can, because I'm not a penniless hippie.
Yeah. So but you get one little farm that is smarter or works the land better, produces more. Another one doesn't. So he then says, I got to eat everything that I've produced, so can you give me some seeds for next season? And they start owing money, etc. Or not money, but they start owing them.
At some point, money comes in as the sort of medium of trade, right?
Well, yeah, sometimes. And so eventually, when they start making coins and they start working metal, but the diversification of labor has to start with surpluses. Then you get the advent of elite. And the elite then start to control things. They have people that make pots for them, that make weapons for them, that produce things. And then they say, if you become part of my army, I will give you this. So you start seeing that whole complex society developing. But it has to start with food surplus.
Okay, so I'll ask Rich's question in a second, but it's like, so what I was more trying to precisely ask, rather than the kind of economic way it works, is like, what inspired, do we have any sort of theories to what inspired people? So again, pots at the very start would just be like, you would assume very plain,
yeah,
very there would be no artistry involved. what would inspire people to then start producing art? I mean, obviously, because we have like cave paintings and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Is it just a continuation of the idea of imprinting images, or is there a specific
and I think
reason? Is there a
there's some
specific
people,
kind of thing that was allowed to go in pots or wasn't?
but the first thing you have to be able to do is do lots of it and become good at it through practice, and then people take on apprentices and that kind of thing. It's same with metalworking. If you start making implements that are useful, and then you start to make jewelry and items of prestige.
If you're pre-coin-based economy, would there have been there wouldn't really have been a point, right? So in theory, I guess the question I'm asking is like, would this have been someone's just like hobby, just like when they have spare time or something?
Well, not this here. These are professional potters.
Those, maybe something more like that.
Right.
Like the earlier stuff, would it have come about like how does it come about? Because the only way I can think of it is essentially if in the same way that maybe a cave painting would or something, that this would be someone's spare time and they just decide to start kind of pissing about drawing on a pot.
Yeah, but some people are obviously more artistic than others. That's still the case today.
Sure.
Why can some people paint and I'm absolutely bloody hopeless at it?
But painting's an established thing now. People are
exposed
to other paintings,
yeah.
It's more, and also painting is like something that could be vocational.
But it evolves over time because people evolve over time.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like to me, the interesting part of the story is the very start.
Yeah.
Say, why did the first person who started drawing in a pot? Why did they start drawing on a pot?
And that you can't answer that because you can't go back in time. So we have pots from the Neolithic that we call impressed wares that were people before the fire, pottery's fire, to just fashion a vessel from clay, and they have imprints. Sometimes it's thumb marks around the edge, or sometimes sit with what we think were twigs and sit and make patterns with that. You have now. I saw one recently. There was it was probably something like a tooth of a mammoth or a whale of some sort, and there's things etched into it, a pattern etched into it. Now this is probably something from before the last ice age. This way before then. It was like 100,000 years ago, they think, because it gets found in deposits of materials that they can date, and then they say, oh, look at this. And this is one of the first things they found of people making a pattern on something. And why? For their own benefit, because they're bored, or because they can, or because they're exploring material to work with, who knows? But I think the cave paintings were put there because before they hunt, and they portray the animals they want to hunt. But you can't really know what was in the mind of a person all those years ago. It's difficult.
There's a couple of economic questions here. One is, how did loans start in theory? And the other one is, what were the original minted coins' values based on?
Right, well, that's difficult because we have had this discussion before about bitcoins, right? Why is it valuable? So we think the first coins in Greece probably were minted in Athens, right? And for rulers, it is a way to get their image onto a coin is an important thing. So for a king, so Alexander minted coins with his image on it because there's no, how do people know things? You know, there's a king somewhere. What does he look like? Well, it could be, who knows? A guy could walk in and say, I'm the king, and we'd believe it. So it's a way of getting their image out there. Even in the Middle Ages, they still did that because there's no mass media of any kind. You know, now we see someone, you see a photograph, or you see, and then in the Middle Ages.
Funnily enough, debatably, we're about to go the other way again. Right. In that people, you already look at things like Instagram filters, for instance, you can kind of edit how you look.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, with CGI, with deep fakes, with all these kind of things, the power of computers to alter the human image while still being in some way believable.
Yeah.
Kind of means that it's going to, you're going to go the other way at some point.
Well, that's you see,
images become far less trustable.
Yeah, well, they become idealized, but that's what happens in statuary as well. You see, the heads of Roman emperors. Well, that's not the way they looked.
No,
it's an idealized image, and on a coin, it's an idealized image. When Henry VIII sent away for a portrait for a prospective bride, it comes back and you think, oh, she looks fine, and then you see the actual when she turns up, and it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, So
basically, that was the early Tinder.
Yeah.
Instead of every few seconds you can swipe on a new picture, you took a few months to swipe on a portrait. Fuck that.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, I think the human mind is capable of so much, and that's why when you look at Earth from the earliest pottery, you see a definite progression of it becomes more and more ornate, it becomes more skilled, all of that. So yeah, but a potter, to be able to do this, these pots, these Athenian pots, to be able to do that, you have to be trained, and you have to have time to develop your skill. Yeah, so someone has to effectively pay you to do these things. Okay. So, early cult activity. So, we see early cult activity. There's some, when I say continuation in name of the gods on linear B tablets. Now, these linear B tablets, sometimes in history and in archaeology, things come down to us by almost like a fluke. Mm-hmm. So, the linear B tablets are found in the palaces, the early palaces in Greece. And they are clay tablets that are used to record things, and then they get wiped clean when they no longer need them. These tablets were lying around somewhere and a fire broke out, so they were baked. Right. And that's why we have them. It's the same as those these wax tablets we found in England near Hadrian's Wall. This big deposit of all these tablets, just by accident. Okay, so early cult activity. So there's the gods. There's a continuation of names. We see that some place where it's sort of never forgotten. Some Bronze Age sanctuaries continue on, and you see a continuation of early cult activity in the same spot, and later becomes a temple, etc., etc. And then sometimes sanctuaries are founded on or near Bronze Age remains. Now,
so what would happen if someone invaded that space? Would they just change the temple into their temple?
Yeah, probably, or
knock down the temple and have a new...
Well, I don't know, or they kicked out the cult images and put their own gods in its place.
Yeah.
What the Romans did when they conquered an area and became part of the Roman Empire, you come into an area, people have their own gods. And they would say, well, that's fine, you can have your own gods, but here's some more. Right? Or they associate a god of a spring with one of their own gods. So then it becomes a double name. So in Celtic, we see that in Britain and in Brittany and a place like that, where you end up with photos being put up to a double-barreled name. So one was probably a god that was already there, and it then gets associated with a Roman divinity. So they become two names, and I can't think of an example at the minute, but yeah.
It's kind of a funny point Pimp's made, but I actually have a question based on it. So he said that the Ottomans did just reuse the metal bits to make cannonballs. But this was actually an interesting point. If you, in this time, invaded somewhere,
yeah,
and they had, useful metals or materials or whatever for military purposes,
yeah,
we just go down like, okay, here's a statue of a thing, but I can make a sword of it, yoink.
Yeah, but you can't use silver, and that's too silver or gold. You can't make weapons with that. You need to temper iron and all the rest of it. Yeah. The reason I put this picture up here This is the famous Lion Gate from Mycenae. So we think that's the entrance to Mycenae. Now, in its heyday, you see these are images of lions above it. It's this huge lintel, and then we get these, what they call these cyclopean walls. Now, the cyclopes were these guys with one eye in the middle of their head, but they were huge. Right? They are from the Odyssey, the Cyclops in the Odyssey. And so these massive stones are called cyclopean because they are so big that they must have been put there by giants, right? That was the theory. Now, what they say is
saying it's a portal to Witcher 3.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And these walls were built so when you go up close to them, apparently the stones are built so well that you can't put a bit of paper in between. That's how closely they are. That's how well they are built, how constructed.
I mean, how did they do that? Did they have a way of filing them down to be the right size?
Well, it was obviously stonemasons were very skillful, and it must have been. You see diagrams sometimes of they think how to build the pyramids by ramps and make the ramp go round, and they hoist the blocks up because they're made from similar. They're made sandstone or limestone blocks.
Did they use cement?
No, these are not. Cement is a Roman invention. So the Colosseum is made with cement. It's cemented up. Apparently the cement they used in the Roman times, it endures better than modern cement because apparently they made it with volcanic ash.
Which is, yeah.
Yeah, and it's very strong. And that's why they could make structures underwater, because for an aqueduct, to build up an aqueduct, you have to...
You're saying to me that picture there's no cement, there's no filler?
No.
It's just stones piled on top of each other?
Yes, very skillfully done. Unbelievably skillfully done.
They have to have had a way to manipulate the size of the stones, though.
Yeah, the stones would have been hewn from a quarry somewhere. Well, I don't know.
But I mean, like once the stones get there, there's no way there's like, okay, here's this stone, it doesn't fit. They have to have a way to actually manipulate the size of the stone.
Yeah. They would have had tools to do that with, fairly rudimentary tools. Yeah.
It's basically Tetris.
Right. Yeah, more or less. Yeah. So, this is an interesting picture. It's a very ancient archaeological picture. You see here that there's a temple at Mycenae that's built over the remains of an earlier Megaron. Now, Megaron is just a round structure.
Rich is saying that it reminds him of the self-supporting stone walls that some farmers will use.
Yes, dry stone walling. Yeah.
The only thing I'll say about that, those walls have like holes in them.
Well, they fill them in with smaller stones. Dry stone walling just the holes get blocked by smaller stones, but there's no cement. No, this is
that's just like purely Tetris.
Yes, and I think this here is probably a modern thing that they have rebuilt bits of it. Right, because when you look at Crete, one of the Minoan palaces there was excavated by a Brit called Arthur Evans, and he found it. They were all strewn all over the place, and he rebuilt it. So what you're seeing on Crete, the Minoan Palace on Crete, is not how they found it. Mm-hmm. They have rebuilt it. So I don't know if this has been, or bits of it been rebuilt. But you see a person there standing.
Yeah.
You see how big these blocks are. They're huge.
And it's also been pointed out the Mayans had a structure like that built from granite. Sorry, Incas, not Mayans.
From granite. Well, granite is more difficult to work than limestone. Yeah. Lime and sandstones are easier to work than granite. Granite is very difficult to work.
The Incas seem like a really interesting civilization.
But they were much later than Greece and Rome, time-wise. Because I think you're talking well into sort of 800 AD, 1000 AD, that kind of time.
Is it the Incas or the Mayans of the city in the cliffs?
Now, Machu Picchu, is that a Mayan? No, I don't think that's Mayan site, is it? Is that Inca? I don't know. Something I know not a huge bit about. Right. So we're looking at early cult activity. Let's go to a site that has continued. Oh, what is it?
Rich is just saying, why did they start creating statues?
The image of the gods. To see the imaging of the gods, I suppose. The images of the god. Now,
I'm not more likely, I suppose, that they did the image of the god first, the image of other men.
No, it's very unusual to have images of men per se. I think it was much more because you're talking about art, so it's much more likely that you see images of the gods or heroes like Hercules and Achilles, half gods, than it is to see images of men. I'm trying to think when you would see. So obviously Roman emperors had statues made of themselves. Alexander, I think it's statues made of himself. I think the Persian kings probably had statues made of themselves, but it's unusual initially. But later on, not, because you get in Greek, on the classical period, you get people, when a person dies, you get erecting a gravestone with the image of the deceased on it. And that's quite normal then. But yeah. So, the Isthmus of Corinth, this is in Greece. So, if I go back to that bit, the map, that's just, so here's the map. So, the Isthmus of Corinth is here, in this area there, right? So, I put on this rather lovely Google image to show you a bit better. So it's called an isthmus because it's a very narrow strip of land between two seas. And
Marcelo got something that sounds intelligent. The statue of a dying Gaul is an interesting exception.
Yes, but we're still talking. This is Roman, and yeah, and I can't remember. He was. It was it. Oh, what's his name? It was meant to be because Caesar conquered a lot of Gaul, and the Gauls were supposed to be quite brave warriors and all that, so it was a big deal. So yes, so that is a statue of an ordinary guy. Yeah, very true, Mersenne. Good point. I don't have a picture of it, but I know exactly. You've seen it as well because it's in the Palatine Museum in Rome. But your father rushes through all these things, and you won't get a.
Thank God, it's the only reason I'm still sane.
You don't get a chance to look properly. Right, the Isthmus of Corinth, very important later sanctuary there.
I just want to point out that if me and Dad didn't pull you through at some sort of reasonable time, I'd have starved to death.
Oh, no. But my favourite place in Britain is the British Museum. Because I could look there I can just be left there for days on end.
Do the depictions of battle count as representing men or the pots representing the funeral rites?
What are we looking about? These pots here?
I'm trying to reread it. So, do the depictions of battle count as representing men? And then I think it's actually a different question. Or do the pots representing the... I'm not quite sure what the second half means. The pots representing funeral rites.
So if we look at this pot here, now this pot here, this I'm pretty
sure... As in showing men on pots.
Yes, so this I'm pretty sure is a person, a man going off to war, right? Because by this time we're in the classical period, so it's a bit more normal. Now this here, and I can't really see it that well. I think they're Maenads. Are they Maenads? And yeah, I can't. It's hard to see. Is that because sometimes the other thing they did was portrayals of myths, right? So you would see quite a lot of pots have things on them like Hercules or Heracles, I should say. That's the Greek name. Doing things, or there's that famous pot with Ajax and Ajax is a Greek hero, and someone else playing a game that looks similar to some sort of what do you call these things with the round
marbles?
No. I know the Dutch word and I can't think of the it's not chess, but the other one.
Checkers.
Checkers, that's it. It looks like some sort of game of checkers. So you see, it might look like a man, but it might be a hero or somebody from myths. But yeah, you see some normal men as well, but they never say, this is Bob from next door or anything. Right. So in the Greek pots, sometimes in the Athenian pots, I had a huge book about that. You have portrayals where they have like words written beside it. So they say, that game is between Achilles and Ajax. Can't remember. And Ajax loses because he always loses, right? Because in the Odyssey he always loses. He loses captives. He loses games. He loses contests of some so he's a very complicated figure.
So it's a bit like watching Marcel stream.
Oh, probably. So I don't know. You're saying these things and I don't know. So the Isthmus of Corinth, right? The Isthmus and Corinth. Corinth as a developing city, right? So these what I mean. Corinth
Lionheart always loses.
Slowly emerges from a loose scatter of house clusters. So you know that in the archaeological record you're seeing these, and then it starts to become, you're starting to see streets with houses on it.
I didn't lose to Hector though, according to notice.
Hector? Oh, did he not? It's so long ago since I read the Iliad. Iliad is hard going.
It's all hard going.
I know. Well, no, the Odyssey is quite interesting because Odysseus has all these adventures, but the Iliad is that they're sitting at Troy and they're having these battles, and it's all these depictions of battles where people
Hector and Ajax fought to a draw.
Did they? All right, because Hector kills Patroclus,
right?
Who what do you call him? Is in a strop. Right, Achilles is in a strop, and he won't fight, and the Greeks are starting to lose. So Patroclus is Achilles' best friend, stroke lover, and he dons Achilles' armor,
right,
and then takes the field, and the Greeks get like lifted by that, and whatever. So Hector sees Achilles and thinks, "I'm going to kill him," and because it's not Achilles, but it's Patroclus. And he's not a half-god. He's killed. And, of course, Achilles is absolutely furious. And then calls Hector. This is the famous scene where he goes right, he stands in front of the walls of Troy and shouts, Hector, Hector. And he comes out. Hector comes out. And, of course, Achilles kills him. And then he puts the body behind his chariot and circles the walls of Troy 3 times before taking back. Anyway, so I didn't know that Ajax and Hector had a draw. Yeah, interesting. But yeah, I remember Ajax,
as far as I can figure it, is basically the kind of like loser who doesn't give up and eventually does something useful kind of archetype.
I can't remember. There are all sorts of stories about Ajax, and I can't exactly remember. But yeah, he's a very complicated figure. Is he?
There's a pot depicting that scene with the chariots.
Is there? Probably. I mean, as I say, I had a couple of books about all these Athenian, but I no longer have them. I've given them all away. Could have had marvelous examples.
So one thing I'm gonna say, folks, is as much as you're quite into it, but do you need the toilet or anything?
No.
Okay.
I don't.
I wanted to build on at some point. We'll probably do with a short break, but
okay.
I don't have to be now.
Don't have to be now, right?
Maybe do like 10 minutes or something.
Well, I mean, I don't have a huge amount left. I don't think so.
Well, you got about half now.
Yeah, the Isthmus of Corinth is interesting because there we see continuation of cult activity.
So I'm quickly gonna get some water.
You're going to get me. Well, I'll get.
Yeah, I'll get you water.
Right. This here is quite an archaic image of Poseidon. This year, and you can see how this is quite a archaic image. It's not very sophisticated, but it is meant to be Poseidon, and we recognize Poseidon because he has this trident. A lot of gods are recognizable because they have attributes that are always the same. So if you see a depiction of Hercules, he usually is has the lion skin and a club. See the picture of that?
Toga?
No clothes. Heroes don't have clothes. So he has a lion skin because
heroes can't afford clothes.
No, they're never depicted with clothes on. Right?
Boo, lecturer took my fees and is rushing through material.
What?
You're being booed. Boo, lecturer took my fees and is rushing through material.
Rushing through? No, I'm not rushing through. I would never rush through. What the hell was I saying? Yeah, so if anyone has seen the pediments from the Acropolis that are in the British Museum in London, you'll see that the gods are also not... The women have got these kind of flowing garments, the goddesses, but the men don't really have clothes as such. So you also see, oh God, on the treasury, one of the buildings at Delphi has the portrayals of gods. I think one of them is... see, if I had my computer, I could pull all these images up, but I don't. You get these... Oh, that's good, thank you. My throat's getting dry. Anyway, are you... Oh, you're ready to pee. Right, what's that little treasure building called? I used to do a tutorial about the friezes on that building because they portray scenes from the Iliad. And one of them is the body of... They're fighting over someone's body. And that is what you get in the Iliad. You get the people fight, descriptions of battles, people fighting them, arms being locked up and whatever. So yeah, the Iliad is hard work to read. I've only ever read that once because I thought, oh my God. But the Odyssey is good fun. And if you are inspired and you want to start reading, I would say start with the Odyssey. And the Odyssey and the Iliad originally are composed as poems. So they're in meter, but when you read them in translation, it's prose. So it's just like it presents as a novel. And we think they are written in meter, so Mersenne will know this, because they were performed by bards, probably over the course of a few evenings at the homes of elites or kings or clan leaders or what have you, as amusement. So they would tell stories, and it's easier to remember things if they're set in meters. So what you see in the Odyssey and the Iliad is you get descriptions of people that are always the same. So if they're talking about Hector, it's always Hector of the glinting helmet, right? If they talk about the sea, it's always the wine dark sea, that kind of thing. And that is because it helps the bard to remember the poems correctly. We're talking about oral tradition, right? So, but I'm saying,
not in the way I'd like to. No.
And I'm saying, if people are inspired to go and read something, go and read the Odyssey, because it's quite like, it presents like an adventure story. Whereas the Iliad's hard going, it's all battle description, arms being lopped off, bodies being fought over, being dragged back to camp, etc., etc. And you see the gods helping. Some are on the side of the Trojans, some are on the side of the Greeks. They come in their chariot, dismount, and help fight. Right? Oh, there goes Apollo.
So, the only comment she got while I was away, the Nemean lion. Don't know what that was.
Nemean lion. So Hercules performed 12 labors, and one of them was he had to slay the Nemean lion, and I think he strangled him. And then it was meant to be a huge thing, and then he skinned it, and he wears the skin. So I'm often saying, this is Poseidon, and we know it's Poseidon because he's carrying this trident, right? So a lot of the gods are recognizable through their attributes. So Heracles, you can soon call Hercules is the Roman name. So Heracles is always, nearly always portrayed with the skin of a lion. So you see the sort of ears coming over his head and a club. What? That's Heracles. Achilles, also.
One of the other comments was fighting over the body of Achilles.
No, not fighting over the body of Achilles. No, fighting over the body of Patroclus.
Like a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah. I was thinking of the wee treasury in Delphi. I can't remember the name of it now, but there's a frieze there where you see scenes from the Odyssey, scenes from the Iliad. It was quite. When we come to the votives, I think I've got a picture of the wee treasury.
So another one was
so there's
talking about the kind of the bard stuff and saying they were also possibly accompanied by music, something we don't experience with poetry today. No,
we don't know that, but it's possible. But what I'm saying is,
what about Stormzy?
Right, I don't know that person. If so, in an oral tradition, if it's so the Iliad and the Odyssey, if we read them now, it's prose. Right, but if you read them in the original Greek, it's in meter. So the reason they do that is.
Do you like bards?
It's.
For anyone who didn't get that, Mum does exactly what I'm missing, which is Dandelion from The Witcher.
Yeah.
It's the only bard you can really think of.
The bollocking bards, right? But they travel around and they perform these poems, and the reason it's in meter apparently is easier to remember. So it's hexameter, isn't it? Ionic hexameter or something. So the rhythm of the poem makes it easier to remember. It's all they're huge.
Well, I know something else I remember from the West Wing at some point is someone. Like one of the judges who's old and is going a bit senile starts delivering his sentences in iambic pentameter.
Iambic pentameter, hexameter.
It was pentameter.
Pentameter was like 5, isn't it? Pent is 7. A hexagon.
It's like I find this denial is not worth a trial or something. Something like that.
Yeah. Right. Anyway. Yes. Right. Back.
Hercules is also the Disney name from that Superman adaptation.
Superman?
It's a joke.
All right.
It's like Hercules was based on Superman and not, the other way around.
Oh, I see.
Ship's running because the lion's hide was too hard to be pierced.
That's right. Well done. Who's that?
Ship.
Right. Correct. So that's why he strangled him. Okay. Back to the Isthmus of Corinth. This is attributes of the gods. Right. So we see Corinth slowly emerges.
Can I say how much teeth pulling I had to do to get this stream set up and look at you?
The thing is, but it was very different. It's a lot of work. Right, it's been a lot of work. Right.
And they should appreciate that by donating to the channel, correct?
Right. Whatever. Evidence.
Donating billions.
Evidence for continued occupation. So we see at where Corinth is, we see there's continuous occupation. Isthmia, that's the name for the sanctuary, obviously because it's on the isthmus, right? It's the sanctuary of Poseidon, and it's the only sanctuary there until the Horion at Pericora. Now, I'll show you where the Horion of Pericora was in a minute. It's an interesting wee spot as well. So, there is no evidence for an actual cult building until the early 7th century BC. So before that, what we see is probably evidence for an ash altar, right? But here we go. Early Isthmia.
When talking about adaptations, I love how they portrayed Brad Pitt, my favorite character from the Iliad and Troy 2004 Hollywood blockbuster.
Don't even go there. That was so bad because I could. But anyway, so what they did in that film was they were very.
Marcel, this is your fault.
Cagey about the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus, and they made it all lovey-dovey about these girls that were war prizes, right? So the story is, oh, for God's sake. So the Greeks are sitting there allegedly 10 years in front of the city of Troy, right? And obviously, that must get a bit boring. So what
Didn't
they
that
do
movie also have a plane in it? I really hope not. Didn't that movie have a plane in it? Someone's asking.
No, I don't think so. Surely not. The
Sure,
plane is in front of the. So yeah, it's a flat bit of ground in front of
no,
Troy.
it doesn't mean that. It means a plane is
that
the one
flies,
that flies.
but obviously not. So,
why is there no picture on this slide?
the earth. So they're sitting there and they raid the countryside. So they raid the villages around Troy.
It's a fuck up. Apparently, there's a plane in one of the shots in the film.
Oh, really? Oh.
There's also a point in which you can see a modern watch on an actor's hand.
Oh, for God's sake! Yeah, well, that doesn't surprise me. Right? Anyway, so they raid villages and small settlements nearby, and in one raid they come back with, and what they basically do is they kill off old people and they take the young people back as slaves, right? That's what it is.
As you do.
As you do.
Random Friday night,
Right, and then Agamemnon, being the king of kings, he divides the loot. So he takes one of the girls, and obviously Achilles is one of the big heroes, so he gets his pick of girls. So he picks another girl. Now, the girl that Agamemnon has in his tent, a slave, well, and we don't want to go into what exactly they did, but don't need a lot of imagination for that. Anyway, turns out her father is the priest of Apollo, right, at a nearby temple. So he comes to the camp of the Greeks, gets to speak to Agamemnon, I want my daughter back, and he basically tells him to sling his hook. So he goes back to the temple, and here's one of these situations where you say, Apollo, if any of the gifts I've given you and any of the...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You need to do something here. I want my daughter back. So Apollo gets his arrows, shoots them at the Greeks, and brings plague, right? So that's what the arrows do. They bring disease. So
okay, I gotta say,
yeah.
as reaction to go... Giving an entire populace plague is
that's what happens. The Greeks, a lot of people get ill with plague, and they say to Agamemnon, that's because Apollo shot his arrows at him because you didn't give the girl back to the priest. So Agamemnon very reluctantly gives the girl back, then says to Achilles, well, I have to give my prize away, but I'm the king of kings, so I will just take your prize now. That's when Achilles goes into a strop and refuses to fight. And then you see what happens.
I mean, if I was Achilles, I'd just kind of go, no. And by the way, if you want her off me, fight me.
Well, can't, because Agamemnon is the boss.
And fuck him.
Well, yeah. Well, obviously he didn't do that, so yeah. And by the way, how do we recognize Achilles on pots and buildings and what have you? What has he got? What is his attribute? Anyone?
He's got boots with no fucking armor on them.
No. He has what we call the Gorgon shield.
Oh, it's just the thing with a big face on it.
Yeah. And why has he got that? His mother...
Shield, yeah.
Yeah. What?
Someone said shield, which was probably before I said it.
It's the Gorgon shield. It's his mother is is she a nymph?
It's incredibly off topic. What do you think of the curse of Tutankhamun?
Oh. Well, they thought there was a curse, but they now think it may have been because there were a lot of foodstuffs placed in the tombs, and they think it may have been some moles or something that people got ill because of that. But Egypt is, I'm going to say, a disgusting place. And certainly in Opera there was no sanitation. There's also some disgusting bugs. So who knows? Yeah. But a curse, no. There's no such thing as a curse, no.
What about modern Egypt? Would you like to go there?
I'm not sure. I can't. I mean, I love, as you know, my interest in history and archaeology was sparked by a history teacher in school. You don't have that nowadays. But when I was at school,
we don't have history teachers.
Yeah, you do. But the history they teach is pish. Right, so when I was at school in Holland, the first thing we got in history were the Persian Wars. Right? That was the first thing, but to go all the way back to the Persian Wars and how they started and blah blah. So, and we then had to pick a project. You know, when we were in 6th year or something, and I
got
picked.
Inspired to watch History by the Scorpion King, another excellent film.
I love the Scorpion.
Have you seen a CGI in that film recently? A couple of years ago or something, there was like a YouTube video that came in my face, like Scorpion King CGI is aged really well or something like that, and it is appalling.
Well, it probably is.
It's
Yeah,
so
yeah, because the walking and stuff. That's like when you watch the early Star Wars film, you think, Jesus wept. Anyway, what the hell was I saying? Oh yes.
I mean, I think that anyway, to be honest.
For my history project for my exam when I left school, I picked Tutankhamun.
Total War Game enjoyer. I actually played the Total War games, but you remember I used to come in and say like how much of this is accurate because there were Rome Total War was one I played, and there was like 3 Roman factions and all infighting politics and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
that game was fun.
That was fun. Yeah. Okay. So that's how I got into history. I love Tutankhamun. I love
that'd be a great thing. You don't like actively fighting, but you wouldn't mind like saying okay, kill that city or whatever. We should play Rome Total War on stream.
We should.
After we finish The Witcher 3.
Right. Izmir. Earliest gold activity at Izmir, we find evidence from the 10th century BC, so it goes all the way back to that. So there's a continuation of pottery sequences. Now I've explained how pottery develops, and that's how it's sequenced. So you can see if it's early pottery, it's planar, etc., etc. There are some small pottery scatters.
Rich, stop asking about Egyptian things.
What's he asking now? It's not really my... What's he asking?
What's the opinion on pyramid and sphinx construction?
Well, the pyramids... for a long time, they thought the pyramids were constructed by slaves. But they're now... they're still excavating this settlement where they think the craftspeople that built the pyramids stayed, lived, and they are properly constructed buildings. There seem to be plenty of evidence for variation of foods, and not to freak anyone out, but what they do is they look at toilets.
Wonderful.
Where they did the toilet, because some seeds are not digested, so you can see they have food. Yeah, I know. Anyway, so they analyzed the
Stop analyzing this now.
So they can see people were well fed, they were well looked after, they were not slaves, they were crafts people. And the idea is that they build ramps around the pyramid to pull the things up until you get to the top. And then when they're at the top, the whole thing's been deconstructed, and that's that. Right? The Sphinx, I'm not sure how they did the Sphinx. But
who doesn't look at toilets when they have questions? You
tell a lot. You tell a lot from excrement, deposits of excrement.
Are you sure you're not just talking shit?
I'm talking shit.
I'm sorry, but I thought that one then really just had to...
So we have evidence of ritual activity from the 10th century, and we have, so mostly for ritual feasting. But there is no...
After the recent conversations, I heard ritual feet and thought I was going to...
Feasting. Ritual feasting. So that's when I said before, you look at pots, benches, hearths.
Have you ever heard of a civilization having ritualistic toilet-going practices?
No.
What a shame.
So I will show you now an image of early Izmir. So
it's a real shame that no one can understand that image.
Yeah. So what we see here is, and I've put a length around it, right? So these are the cult buildings. They're later. But when these stripy things here is what they call the Cyclopean walls. Right? So I showed you at Mycenae what a Cyclopean wall looks like. So you see that there is, these cult buildings are built near those ancient remains. So the temples are here. Right? These stripy things here is elevations. Right, so that's a geological map. So this is the area of the early cult activity. So then they build the... I'll better show this. So these are the scatters, and these are an outline of an early temple. So this is what we see now, which is but that'll be much, much later when you'd have a much bigger building. So it's a hut or a tent. So these are probably post holes. So wooden piles rather than stone columns, which you find later on at Ismail. I forgot, what else have I got? Oh, here. There's Peracora. Now, Peracora, this is the 2nd century sanctuary on the Isthmus. So Peracora is kind of here. And now I'm not sure where the actual, because you can't see that here, where the actual big sanctuary of Poseidon was. So Peracora is a kind of secondary. Is this it here? No, early Isthmia. Peracora, right. So you see that's in a kind of bay area. It's a temple to Hera, and it's in a small cove on the Corinthian Gulf. So there's other buildings on this side. So these columns here are probably indicative of the temple building, but there was also a dining room for ritual feasting, a stoa, which this is this here. Now, a stoa can contain anything from shops to law courts, all that kind of thing. And the cistern is obviously for water.
Do you think they had a Starbucks?
They probably did have a Starbucks in a Starbucks.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's all this cult activity going on at Peracora from the 9th century until 146 BC. So that is a long period of time for, and probably the stratigraphy of this site will be quite complicated. So it'll be difficult to see what gets built before that. So by stratigraphy, these are layers. When you think of archaeology, you dig down and you come to the later layer. But the further down you go, the earlier in time it gets. Right?
Guys, I have a totally unrelated question I want to ask you. Have you ever had a conversation, like maybe in a first date or something, where someone's just talking and talking and kind of looks at you, and you kind of nod and say, yeah, and really you've just completely zoned out. You've got absolutely no idea what's happening. Like they could be selling you that Hitler was a great guy and asking for your approval. And
right? Are you saying that I'm talking about stratigraphy and you've zoned out?
I zoned out before the start.
You're just being naughty, right? So. This is what's various sanctuaries on the Isthmus. So we've got the ones at Peracora, we're on the actual Isthmia sanctuary. So they bought this. So you get an emerging polis, an emerging town that uses these sanctuaries because it's a place where people meet, right? And therefore they articulate the territory of Corinth, but also its sphere of influence. Now, this is what's left of the temple at the moment. This is an artist's impression of what it may have looked like.
How did they lift those horizontal pillars onto the vertical ones?
Oh, who knows? I don't. The same question at Stonehenge, isn't it?
Right-click, rotate 90 degrees.
Yeah. So the Isthmia, the big sanctuary of Poseidon at Isthmia is controlled by Corinth, the city.
Here's a great question.
And then they host
Do you think those temples are real?
Yes, they are real. They are real. These are fairly plain columns. You see the columns in Athens. They're very much more ornate. So these are fairly plain. So eventually...
Stonehenge actually, like, because Stonehenge is earlier in this, isn't it?
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah,
Stonehenge is Neolithic.
Stonehenge was really, how the fuck?
Well, there must have been. They probably, they lie down and somehow they'll have made a socket. They dig a socket for the stone and thingy in, and then raise it up and then pack it down.
How did they have the leverage high enough?
I don't know. They must have done it with ropes or whatever, and it would have included one of the things about Stonehenge is this as a monument. That must have taken A, years, and B, there'd be a huge number of people involved in its erection.
Well, the other thing is, what's the point of it?
Well, we don't know. That's been debated, and every time they make new discoveries about Stonehenge, I sit there and go, The thing about prehistory is there's no written evidence. You don't have anything. All you have is what's been left behind.
Well, don't worry. That's so basically what you're saying is it's just a bunch of conjecture.
And obviously, if you're a professor of archaeology at the University of Cambridge, you have a lot more clout to say that than if I come along and say, well, I actually don't agree. That's a whole lot of pish. Right? But absolutely none whatsoever. At least I'm a doctor.
Well, yeah, but they're wrong and I'm right.
Well, you can say what you want. And that's what they do. The Druids say, this idiot head Druid person sits there and the longest day, the 22nd of June, they have some ceremony. I think, well, okay. I mean, there's mention of Druids in when not when Claudius, when...
I just want to point out that we've just proved that prehistory archaeology is a corrupt field.
It's a field, it's open to interpretation. Right, and what well, yes, in some sense, but when you have
certainly nowadays, I mean, you'll see if any of you brave sites such as Twitter or even worse Tumblr or these sorts of places, you'll get the most absolutely imaginative readings of history you could ever wish to see.
But that's usually done by people who know a little bit but not enough.
A little about a lot and a lot about nothing.
Absolutely, mostly about nothing. These are people, remember, that watch Love Island.
Ask Driftmum about Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe, that's in Turkey. That's one of the
older than the Stonehenge by 6,000 years. Of interesting structures.
Yeah, that's one of the oldest. And also, by the way, the earliest evidence we have for people living.
What are you talking about? Shall I get more mints?
No, I'm fine. In some sort of community or city. That's there, and so they call that the fertile triangle between the Euphrates and the I had it a minute ago. There's two big rivers. That the earliest evidence for civilization of any kind is there, but the Göbekli Tepe are these huge. I mean, do they have? I think they have
Tigris River.
The Tigris, yeah. The Euphrates and the Tigris is the fertile. That's where we think the first farming started in that area, and then spread over Europe slowly.
Incidentally, another thing we should do on stream at some point. I think I briefly introduced you to. What was it you called it again? It might be. It's debatably one of the best videos on YouTube.
Oh.
About as well as I can claim it, which is History of the Entire World, I guess I think it's called.
All right.
But we should watch the early part of that and see, what you can add to it and that sort of thing. We can actually do that at the end of this stream. Fucking interesting. What?
Yeah. Right. Okay. Let's get to the end first.
Well,
so
also Mersenne, I just want to point out, Mersenne says, I've encountered a video in which an Italian historian confronted a TikToker who claimed that the Roman Empire didn't exist.
Oh my God. Right. Okay. Fine. Was that by any chance a Chinese person who claimed that, who obviously knows nothing about Western history?
That is the most random assumption.
Well, that's not where TikTok started.
Yeah, but
is it not a Chinese platform?
It's depressingly popular in the West.
Oh God! Right? Okay. Well, I don't want to know. These are people that watch Love Island, so I have absolutely no interest in trying to convince them one way or another.
I'd like to convince them to not have children. Is that doable?
Well, yeah, it probably would, because it would interfere with their perfect bodies. They're surgically enhanced bits. Right. So, everyone knows about the Olympic Games, right? They started in Delphi. Delphi had these big games that the whole of Greece would
Should they be called the Delphi Games?
Delphi Games. It's something people do that. But no, yes, you're right. They are the Delphi Games.
I'm right, by the way.
Ismia also. Ismia also had Pan-Hellenic games.
Oh, Rich, that's a horrendous thought.
What?
In 1,000 years, Love Island will be a historic topic.
Oh, for God's sake, don't even say that. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? But to me, something like Love Island is completely not interesting to, in any kind of way.
It's the world's thickest people assembled.
Yeah, it's insane.
They have like fucking 12 people or some shit, and they still don't break triple figures in IQ.
No.
Like, it's terrible. Why would I possibly want to watch? These people are actively the most irritating fucks because they have that perfect combination of complete idiocy and being unbelievably fond of themselves.
Yes, of course. And totally absorbed by the way they look. It's all very, very superficial. Talking of superficial, who knows who this is?
Is it someone from Love Island?
Yes. It's also called Apollo. Why is it Apollo? Long hair, no beard. So he is a young man.
No beard's a bad choice.
No beard is a sign that you are young.
So what you're saying is so the
mature.
Inverse,
the mature
the
god
of that is that a beard is a sign of maturity.
It is the mature gods, Zeus, Poseidon, they have beards. Apollo does not. The reason I've said this.
So basically, to frame it another way, right? People like Mersenne, Kung Fu, Lionheart, they are by definition of the Greek pantheon immature. Yet I'm staggeringly mature individual.
Absolutely. There we go.
Proved by Greek science.
Proved by Greek science, yes. So, early temples. We think 8th century temple to Apollo in Eretria. And the earliest phase resembles an apsidial hut. Now, this is what that says. So, an apse is this here. This bit here is the apse. And that kind of roof, probably with roof tiles. But yeah, it's a thatched roof. That's meant to be thatched roof. So yeah, the thatched roof before roof tiles, timber frame, mud brick walls. So you know how that works. So they have a timber frame, and then sometimes the mud is mixed with straw and excrement, and then patted into the frame.
Your fucking building's made of poo.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
It's to add
no, I don't want to know
strength.
Fucking strength.
Once it dries, you can't smell it. You can't.
Right, that's really reassuring.
And I don't even think it's human poo. It's probably animal.
That's better. None of them is better. I don't really know, whatever. The point is, the thing I was going to say, this is far less excrement based. Is this kind of looks like this building?
Yeah.
Sort of looks like a boat, like upside down on top.
Yeah,
of it.
almost. Yeah. So this is the actual. This is a miniature.
Greeks literally built their temples out of shit.
No, in the beginning, in the very early temples. Later on, of course, you get much more sophisticated buildings. Now, we're talking 8th century.
Can you imagine what the Greek advertising executives were like? New temple in Athens now with 80% less poo.
So. This is what's found. This is a reconstruction, right? So they find a little votive in the shape of what they think is a temple or was an early temple building. And this is a reconstruction of that thing there. You with me? Yeah, no, clearly not. Right, so here is a crater. Now, a crater is a big pot, a fragment. And this is the example of a temple, an early temple we see, both with columns, and there's the cult image. So this is the cult statue.
So a lot of what we're assuming is based on essentially some kind of ruins.
Yeah.
And then our imagination what the ruins look like based on things like what's on
Yeah,
pots.
but when you look at this, then clearly, yes. So this is a depiction on a pot of an early temple. This is the pediment here. This is This is a pediment, this triangle thing. The frieze might have been a frieze here, but not in the beginning. These would have been pretty plain. That stuff came later. Now that is called on the side of a building. What's that called? I knew in a minute ago what that was called. Come to me in a minute. So you get beginning, you get simple temples, then we get something more complicated. An example of that is the Herain on Samos. This is the island of Samos. So the first temple there is the 8th
Where
century
is this
BC.
island?
This is in the Greek. Samos is...
One could suggest that you reference your map. Yeah, there we go.
I know, but not sure which one is Samos. I think it's one of these here. That's obviously Crete. So, what does that say? I can't read these things. So it'll be in here somewhere. And I think it's near the coast of Asia Minor. Samos. No?
There. Same.
This?
Yeah.
Yep. Right. So it's an island. Islands are always special, right? I did my thesis on...
I just like to technically point out that in theory, every single piece of land in the world is an island.
Well, yes, but islands, this is clearly a small island, Samos. So the temple, the sanctuary of Hera is here, right? Samos. So we are dealing here with seafaring. People come and go. You know, it's an island, so they need to bring supplies, and therefore that sanctuary was very well known in the Greek world, and also very well a lot of people came to it. So as you can see here, you can see the cult statue, you can see the cult, you can just about see that these are meant to be doors here.
How sophisticated was their seafaring travel?
Right, so sea travel, what happens is you have no charts. Right, so people
seems like a bit of a
navigate by the stars possibly, but a lot of the time they hug the coastline on a safe day, so they keep land inside, or the island hop. Now you can see that during the Persian invasion, the island hopped across, right, from Turkey, and they sort of go from island to island, and rather than in the second invasion, they came over land. So they built a bridge here and then came around that way. But initially, they tried to island hop across here from islands. That's why islands are all strategic places that are contested. So in the Mediterranean, there's Sicily, there's Sardinia. They were especially Sicily. On one side of Sicily, you have Greek colonies. On the other side, you have Carthaginian colonies. And the reason they're there is to give people a foothold on an island. And Sardinia also, and mostly are Carthaginian, and then later Roman. So there we see the Temple of Hera here at Samos. This is a reconstruction of what this simple one would have looked like. Now you see...
The temple is Hera.
The temple to Hera, the goddess at Samos.
So Hera.
Yeah. I know what you're doing. Right. These are the post holes of a wooden structure. Right. So you've got a roof, wooden columns, and there's a sort of altar thing. Then later you get these, you can see that's much more complicated. You've got 2 rows of columns. And it would have been stone columns rather than, and tiled roof probably as well. So there you go. That's the big temple, the big monumental temple, the first hugely monumental temple. But it became a competition. Whose temple is the biggest? So the Hieraion on Samos has a huge temple, and it's called the Roikos temple. That's the architect. It's called Roikos. So you see all these double rows of columns, and the columns going here. This was destroyed by fire, but it was then rebuilt. Right, let's see. The first... Yeah, so we have a sacred way towards the temple, and the sacred way is lined with statues put up by elite to the goddess. And it's also a way of saying it's obviously conspicuous consumption of a kind, because if you put a massive statue beside on the sacred way leading up to the temple, it's like people saying, and if people put their names on it, they say this was dedicated to the goddess by so and so and so.
Yeah, so it's kind of,
right. So it's like, look at me, look at what I'm doing, you know, for the god.
Athens also has a huge statue of Athena.
Yes, in the temple of Athene. Because Athene is the patron goddess of Athens. So there was this.
Imagine getting okay, you're going to be the god of war, and you're going to be the goddess of this little city.
Athena is the goddess of wisdom and is it strategy?
Colonoscopy.
Possibly, but so there's this the myth, this foundation myth of Athens is that there was a contest between Athene and Poseidon to be the patron god of Athens. And what Poseidon did is he stuck his trident in the soil and it made a spring come up from the ground, right? Water flowing. And Athene, I think, made a olive tree. And you can also know that so Athene won the contest. That was the upshot of it all. And on Athenian coins from very early on, their depiction on the coins is the little owl. So the owl is, an owl is associated with wisdom, and the owl is associated with Athene. So if you see a portrayal of Athene, she usually has a helmet sort of halfway down her sort of here, sitting on her head, and the owl sometimes is with her. The owl is definitely a symbol of Athene, and therefore Athens adopts that on their coinage.
So the whole owl being the animal of wisdom started with the Greeks, or would that have been an association?
I don't know if that started there or not.
I was looking to see how much you have left. Yeah,
fine. Yeah. So so this island sanctuary on Samos has a special character because it's a marine trading center. So the Stoa and the Sacred Way are probably of the second. Oh my God! I can hear the dog crying.
She's not crying. She's being an arse.
Being an arse. Right. Oh no. Whoops. Sorry. So.
Yes.
This is what's left.
Do you guys remember your teenage years? These are preteen related. Like,
this is what's left.
When I was 10 years old, I didn't go to Disneyland. I went here.
Yeah. No, we've never been to Samos, but we've been to similar places, small walls. Yeah.
Many similar places.
This is what's left of it now. Yeah. Sad in a way. So, but this would have been the top, or would it? Yeah, that looks at the top of a column. So that.
Unfortunately, you're a little bit late to the proceedings.
Who's this?
All
right. Yeah, I'm really sorry, and I'm not going back all to the beginning.
No, but I will. I'll do something with the board.
Right. Okay. So, more examples. This is quite this one is quite very well kept. I know it's the dog, eh? There's a temple of Poseidon at Paestum. And Paestum was a Greek colony in the south of Italy. So that's in reasonable condition. This is a aerial shot of what's left of the temple of Hera. This is Samos again. But you can see there what the size of it was. It was a huge thing. And this is in Athens. I actually have been here. I've actually been here. What's she doing? You can let her in. Yeah, let her in. So, now remember we were talking about votives, offerings to the gods by an individual. So I said before, it can be something very simple, pieces of stone, pieces of minerals, pine cones, etc. There is a wooden statue from the waterlogged deposit at the Herain at Samos. And you see that this is clearly a very simple one that was carved by a person. Right.
You wanted to let her in.
Yeah, I wanted to let her in.
No.
Oh, you're so naughty. Right, sit down, girlie. What a shame. So we have offerings that can be made to the gods by individuals. You can also have offerings made by a city-state. So so the city-state of whatever puts an offering on a Delphi, because Delphi is the place, although we have a big important sanctuary.
How many electricians think are getting their feet sniffed
I
by a
know.
dog while they're trying to
Big important thing sanctuary, the Isthmus. Isthmus is a very important sanctuary, but obviously Delphi is also where it's at. And you see this developing, not only individuals, get down, making offerings to the gods, but also city-states making offerings to the gods. And it becomes a competition to see who has the best.
Well, I mean, that hasn't changed.
No, that hasn't changed. So here are the Siphonian treasury. This is the Siphonian treasury of Delphi. Now, we used to do a tutorial about that because the imagery here is very interesting, but I haven't got all these big images. I've just given you some examples of photos of people or city-states that make these massive offerings. This is the Sphinx of Naxos. Naxos, another island, Greek island. One of the
things I said, I remember the first time I looked at this person, I said, that looks Egyptian to me.
Yeah. Well, it has Egyptian influences for sure.
How could they have Egyptian influences, though?
How?
Yeah.
Well, the Egyptian culture was earlier, but remember, when Alexander conquers Egypt, when Alexander dies, he has no successors. So his generals, his empire gets split up between the generals. And Ptolemy, who was his friend and a general of Alexander, he takes Egypt. So then you get the Ptolemaic pharaohs. So that goes down, Ptolemy first, second, and blah, 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 blah. That goes all the way down to Cleopatra. So there are Greek influences in...
Like Cleopatra wasn't really...
She was Greek by descent, from descent. She was a Greek. So the influence go back and forward. And there's travel. There's travel and there is trade and ships doing their loops around the Med, trading goods, trading pots, trading all sorts of stuff. Yeah, that too. So this is the Siphonian treasury. Yeah, watch. At Delphi, and it's an actual building. So this whole building is erected along the sacred way of Delphi. There's lots of different stuff. There's a huge photo from Sparta later on. I think Athens, when they beat the Persians, they erect a big monument as well. The Siphonian treasury is interesting because it's also got these columns in the form of ladies or goddesses, and that's the face of one. I can't. And there's a pediment and a frieze on the Siphonian treasury building. So it's a very elaborate building. It's to acclaim to that Siphnos, again, at one of the Greek islands.
The questions are: what does the Sphinx represent? And Sphinx also appears in Oedipus?
Oedipus? Yeah, the Sphinx is a mysterious being that sets questions, riddles in Oedipus. Oedipus Rex.
Any good?
Yeah. I don't know. What happens is Oedipus is... But he is the son of the king and queen of Thebes. Now, I can't remember what the Sphinx, why it comes to anyway, there's a prophecy, right? There's a prophecy that says that the son, the baby that's just born, will kill his father and marry his mother, right?
Oh dear.
So in order to prevent that from happening, the king and the queen give the baby away to some shepherd somewhere, right? And then, of course, you can't, this is all to do with, you can't prevent fate. If something's going to happen, it will happen. That's the sort of moral. Now, I can't remember why the Sphinx comes to Delphi. It might have been upset by one reason or another, but it sits at the, to Thebes. And I think Oedipus gets the riddle right. Now, first of all, he travels to Thebes, and then the father... I can't remember. The father along the road, he meets the father. He doesn't know it's his father. And something happens and he ends up killing him. And he goes to Thebes, and his mother's called Jocasta. And he also doesn't know it's his mother. But I think there's some to do, if I remember correctly, and it's so long ago, I did this in first year, then when he gets the riddle right, the Sphinx goes away, because I think also the Sphinx brings disease or whatever, and he gets to marry the queen, who by this time obviously is a widow. So he marries this mother, he doesn't know it's his mother, and then he finds out later, they have children, they have 4 children, 2 sons and 2 daughters or something. And he finds out later on, and he ends up blinding himself. He goes to a sanctuary, somebody blinds him, and he lives out his life in some remote
Not sure
base.
blinding yourself is really the answer, but okay.
No, but he does that as a punishment to himself. Yeah, it's a very tragic story. There are 3.
He also punished himself for information he couldn't have possibly known.
No, well, but then there are 3 plays all about Oedipus. So one's called Oedipus Rex, then it's Oedipus at Colonna. That's where he blinds himself.
Marcena is saying that he also searches for the king's murderer himself.
Right. Possibly. And then there's Antigone. His daughter is called, and so there's also this, it carries on in the next generation because the 2 brothers end up fighting on opposite sides in a war, and the uncle takes over as king of Thebes, and then he won't allow one of the brothers to be buried. So Antigone is his sister, so she defies the king by covering the brother with sand, so it's a form of burial, and she then gets punished by being buried alive. And it was lovely. Greek tragedy. It's not called Greek tragedy for nothing. But yeah, it's so in Athens, the plays were performed in 3s. So and don't think these were good things, because I read them and they're just, it's not, the play itself is okay, but then you get these so-called choral odes, and you sit and read them going, oh my God. So that's when they were performed by some sort of chorus. They'll say and it's just, it sounded, you think, oh, you must have been sitting there going, let me out of here. So you get 3 plays, and then obviously to lighten the mood slightly, the final one is a comedy. And there were competitions. There were competitions of playwrights had competitions, and then they would stage their plays with the actors wearing masks, and they would be judged, and somebody would be handed a big ornamental cup of some kind. So,
I mean, you later back in.
I know. These are the twin chori. That's Argos. Argos is a city-state dedicated at Delphi. So
insert Argos joke here, but yeah.
right. Cleobis, thought to be Cleobis and Biton. Now there's again a myth about them, something to do with pulling, ploughing,
So to speak.
Ploughing, actually ploughing a field, and they were taken up to heaven or something. I can't exactly remember that, but yeah. So you can see how competition to put up the best photos was very real. Delphi is a fascinating place because not only are they have this big temple to Apollo, they have the oracle there. And the oracle goes down to this thing called an omphalos, which is meant to be a stone. And they think what happened was there were vapors coming out of the earth. It must have been some sort of spring or something. And the Pythia, that's the priestess, would go down and inhale. And they were also burning laurel leaves of some sort. And the Pythia would inhale the smoke and then come back and say an oracle. And it was always in some sort of rhyme.
So basically they got high.
Yeah. And she would say, so people would go, so when Athens went to ask for an oracle about how they could repel the Persians, she came back with some sort of oracle and saying the wooden walls will not fall, and they were going, well, what on God's green earth does that mean? And Pericles, one of the statesmen in Athens, said, I know what that means. We need to build ships. And they went and they built all these ships, and the fleet eventually defeats the Persians at Salamis. The Athenian fleet defeats the Persian fleet at the island of Salamis. So he then said he was right. So they had, but usually the claptrap they come away with can be explained in a variation of ways. And one of the famous ones was that one of the Syracuse, one of the big Greek colonies on Sicily, is called Syracuse, a very powerful city-state. So when Athens wanted people to come and support them against the Persians, Syracuse went to Delphi to ask if that was the right thing to do, and they came away with something, and they said, "Oh well, we're not doing it. We've been advised not to do it by the oracle." But allegedly, the battle. Then Syracuse has a battle against the Carthaginians because the Carthaginians are on the east side or the west side of the island, and Syracuse is on the east side, and there was a battle there, and supposedly at the same day as the battle at Salamis, which we think is a historical synchronization and probably didn't take place on the same day, but hey ho.
Seems unlikely anyway, yeah. So, Vic notes just saying volcanic activity with potential carbon monoxide poisoning was a theory, so...
Oh, well, possibly. Well, there was definitely inhalation of something. Some sort of fumes or vapors or whatever they call them. So the Pythia would go into a trance and then, come away with an oracle. Okay, folks, so... Can we... Well, we've watched all these things, I say... Why can we come to a firm conclusion about why space becomes sacred? So we've seen that in an individual sanctuary, there are often more than a single reason why it becomes sacred. So at Ismia, we see a continuation of cult activity on that side, but there's also Cyclopean walls there, so there could be a connection with the past. And Samos, it's much more straightforward. They built a small temple and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So, and the fact that it's an island and it's got maritime, it's a center of trade. So therefore people come and, it becomes more and more important. There'll be big votive statues erected, etc. So it's very difficult to say why specific spaces become sacred. And the only conclusion you can come to is that you have to look at every sanctuary in its own right. Now, if I was really, really interested in this, I think there would be a possibility to write a doctoral thesis about this. And if you would have to do a survey, a comprehensive survey of every sanctuary in Greece, which is a huge amount of work, but then you could say, so this number of sanctuaries spring up because of this number springs up because of that, and then look at it and perhaps give a better overview. But at the moment, what we do have, and it's very often in archaeology, we get some people dig at Athens, some people dig at Corinth, some other people have digs in Delphi. Now, I don't know if they're still digging at Delphi. They're still digging at Athens, I think. And other people digging in Sparta, where Sparta or Mycenae, and very often the people don't communicate. And increasingly, I think if it's university-led excavations, they will start to do exactly that, because it becomes more and more apparent that there needs to be a dialogue going on about what happens here and what happens there. And how can we make sense of it when you put the two together? So we see more and more collaboration between universities to do these things. The end. Any more questions?
Any more questions? Well, I'll quickly get this video up, but everybody should clap for Driftmum and chat for the for the work and the knowledge and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, the knowledge is
You fucker.
years of reading. But I need to go and take my dog out for.
Well, yeah, but we can do.
We'll do a quick.
Yeah, that's just a thing I want to do. So she can wait 10 minutes there.
Yes, she can. Yeah. But what I really hope is that, you know, people will be inspired to learn more about these things, because that's what it's about.
Merson saying this is amazing. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay.
Thanks for the lecture. Clap, much appreciated. But
Okay. Good. Well, that's fine. It was my pleasure. I just hope that it's been interesting.
Yeah, any questions, people?
History of Japan.
Holy Land on the way? Come on, I know you want to take.
Why is this wet? Are you drooling? She's disgusting. You're disgusting.
A long time ago, actually.
Never, right?
Right, so I have to get this up on the stream actually quickly.
Yep.
You know, more inspired by this than normal streams. Well, thank you very much. Favorite Greek city-state?
Which one? Athens?
No, they're asking you.
Corinth. Oh, Sparta.
How many subs for next history stream? It'll never happen.
Well, I would have to have a bit more of an idea. I mean, I could easily do a presentation about my
Thesis.
My thesis subject, you know, my doctoral thesis, but it might be, I don't know, it might be interesting for people. It's to do on the island of Sardinia and mostly grave monuments or grave commemoration to the dead of ordinary people and how they dealt with the fact that you become under the Roman Empire and how people deal with commemoration. Because we see Latin inscriptions on stones, but there's other things going on underneath. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. What's this? Oh, it's good. Right. Okay.
You can listen. I'll put it up so we can hear it.
Right.
Right, chat. You can let me know if this is loud enough or not, or whatever.
Never, and also now. Nothing is nowhere. When? Never. Makes sense, right? Like I said, it didn't happen. Nothing was never anywhere. That's why it's been everywhere. It's been so everywhere you don't need.
Hold on a minute. So we've got no questions really, just simple word of appreciation. It's been a real treat to get reminded of all the Greek mythology and educated about it in more in-depth aspects of temples. I didn't even know things I didn't know about these.
Oh yeah, but yeah, no one. Yeah. You can't. You don't know what you don't know. That's always the case. Who says that? Rich?
Pio.
Right.
No, Rich isn't that literate.
Need a where. You don't even need a when. That's how every it gets.
Right, is this something?
Forget
happening?
this. I want to be something. Go somewhere. Do something. I want things to change. I want to invent time and space. And I know it's possible because everything is here and it probably already happened. I just don't know when to start. And that's exactly where it started. Oh, I paused it. I think there's a universe now. What's it made of? Quarks and stuff. Ah, that's a thing. In a place. Don't like it? Try a new place. At a different time. Try to stick together because the world is going to get bigger and emptier. But it's not empty yet. It's still very full and about 1 jillion degrees. Great news. The quarks are now happily married in groups of 3 called a proton or a neutron. And there's something else flying around too that wants to join in but can't because it's still too...
God damn it. Fuck off, PayPal.
Introducing Magic Eraser.
Fuck off, Magic Eraser.
Google Pixel 6.
How about we erase Google?
Great news. The protons and neutrons are now happily married to each other. Some of them even doubled up. Great news. The electrons have now joined in. Congratulations. The world is now a bunch of gas in space. But it's getting closer together. And it's getting closer together. And it's getting closer together. It's a star. New shit just got made. Some stars burn out and die. Bigger stars burn out and die with passion and make some brand new, way crazier shit. Space dust. Which allows newer, more interesting stars to be made and then die and explode into even crazier space dust. So now stars have cool stuff around them, like rocks, ice, and funny clouds, which can make some very interesting things. Like this ball of flaming rocks, for example. Holy shit, we just got hit with another ball of flaming rocks. And it kind of made a mess, which is now the moon. Weather update, it's raining rocks from outer space. Weather update, those rocks might have had water inside them and now there's hot steam in the sky. Weather update, cooler temperatures today and the floor is no longer lava. Weather update, it's raining. Severe flooding alert, the entire world is now an ocean. Volcano alert. That's land. There's life in the ocean. What? Something's alive in the ocean. Oh cool, like a plant or an animal? No, a microscopic speck. It lives at the bottom of the ocean and eats chemical soup, which is being served hot and fresh, made from gnarly space ingredients left over from when it was raining rocks or whatever. Oh yeah, and it can do that. It has secret instructions written inside itself telling it how to build another one of itself. So that's pretty nifty, I would say. Tired of living at the bottom of the ocean? Now you can eat sunlight. Using a revolutionary technique, you can convert sunlight into food. Taste the sun. Side effect, now there's oxygen everywhere and the sky's blue. Then the earth might have been a snowball for a while, maybe even a couple of times. It's a sponge, it's a plant, it's a worm and some other types of weird strange water bugs and strange fish. It's the Cambrian explosion.
Yeah.
Wow, that's animals and stuff. But we're still in the ocean. Hey, can we go on land? No. Why? The sun is a deadly laser. Oh, okay. Not anymore, there's a blanket. Now the animals can go on land. Come on, animals, let's go on land. Nope, can't walk yet. And there's no food yet, so I don't care. Okay, will you learn to walk if there's plants up here? Maybe, said some bugs. And fish.
Long fish at the first.
Okay, so I can go on land, but I have to go back in the water to have babies. Learn to use an egg.
I was already doing that.
Use a stronger egg. Put water in it. Have a baby on land in an egg. Water is in the egg. Baby in the egg, in the water, in the egg. Works for me. Bye-bye, ocean. And now everything's huge, including bugs. Want to see a map of the land? Sure. Oh, fuck. Now everything's dead. Just kidding. Here are the survivors. Keep your eye on this one because it's about to become the dinosaurs. Here's another map of the land. Yeah, it broke apart. Don't worry about it. It does that all the time. Here comes a meteor. And the dinosaurs are gone. It's mammal time. Here come the mammals.
Yeah.
Look at those breasts. Now they're going to dominate the world, and one of them just learned how to grab stuff and walk. No, like walk like that and grab stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
And bang rocks together to make
Plasticine.
pointed rocks. Ouch.
Yeah.
And set things on fire. Youch. And make crazy sounds with their voice. Knirsch, which can mean different things. That's a human person. And now they're everywhere. Almost. Ice Age. What? You can walk over here? Cool. Not anymore. Well, I guess we're stuck here now. Let's review. There's people on the planet. And they're chasing their food. Fuck it. Time to plant some grass. Look at this. I control the food now. Now everyone will want to be my friend and live near me. Let's all build houses, except mine is bigger because I own the food. This is great. I wonder if anyone else is doing this. Tired of using rocks for everything? Use metal. It's underground. Better farming was just invented in a sweet dank valley right in between these two rivers. And the animals are helping. Guess what happens next? More food. And more people who came to buy the food. Now you need people to help make the food and keep track of the sales. And now you need houses for people to live in and people to make the houses. And now there's more people and they invent things, which makes things better. And more people come and there's more farming and more people to make.
Yeah,
did you recognize?
that is we had a can't remember it.
Invent things, which makes things better.
Would have to go and look at
Buy
my
the food.
computer. We
Now you
did a
need people to help make the
tutorial
food and
about
keep track of the sales. And now you need houses for people to live in and people to make the houses. And now there's more people.
that. I think, these are like tributes being paid to something. I would have to go and look on my tutorial notes for that. Yeah, that's a very well known thing.
Arsene sent us a video to get angry to if you want later, which is the TikToker versus the Roman Empire.
Oh, right. Yeah, I couldn't cope with that.
No, neither did I. Neither could I don't think.
People and they invent things, which makes things better. And more people come and there's more
I'm
farming and
allergic
more people to
reaction
make
to
more
TikTok.
things for more people. And now there's business, money, writing, laws, power.
There was that
Coming soon to a dank river
flashed,
valley near you. Meanwhile,
I think that was Arcadian cuneiform tablet that flashed past there. That was like little indents with probably with kind of wooden stylus. It looks like little triangles.
people and now there's business, money, writing.
That. Yeah, that's
My
their
pausing skills are on point.
they're cuneiform tablets. Yeah.
Laws, power, society.
Why is this
Coming
wet?
soon to a dank river valley near you. Meanwhile, out in the middle of nowhere, the horse is probably being tamed. Why is all my metal so lame and lumpy? Tired of using lame, sad metal? Introducing bronze, made with special ingredient tin from the far lands of Tinland. I don't know, my dealer won't tell me where he
And in
gets it.
Britain.
Also, guess what?
Right.
Meanwhile, out in the middle of nowhere, they figured out how to put wheels on a horse. Now we're getting somewhere. Also, China! And did I mention Indus River Valley Civilization?
I know nothing about that. Nothing whatsoever.
The Middle East is getting more complicated. Maybe because it's in the middle of the East.
Syria.
Knock knock, or clop clop. It's the people with the horses. And they made an empire. And then everyone else copied their horses.
Yeah.
Greeks! Ah, look, it must be the Greeks, or a beta version of the Greeks. Let's check
That's
in with the
Minoan.
Indus River Valley Civilization. They're gone. Guess who's not gone? China. New arrivals in India. Maybe it's those horse people I was talking about, or their cousins or something. And they wrote some hymns and mantras and stuff. You could make a religion out of this. There's the Bronze Age collapse. Now the Phoenicians
Yeah, see, that's right. The Phoenicians are from the Levant, going into the west. That's four goers from the Phoenician are the four bearers of Carthage. So you see how they. So when the collapse of the Bronze Age Bronze Age palace culture. So in Mycenae and on Crete, then after that in the Phoenicians, and they go westward. They come into the Western Med for the first time. Yeah, go.
We switch to a metal that's a little easier to find? Thanks. Look who came back to Israel. It's the 12 tribes of Israel. And they believe in God. Just one, though. He's got like a 10-step program. Here's some huge heads. Must be the Olmecs. The Phoenicians make some colonies. The Greeks copy their idea and make some colonies. The Phoenicians make a colony so big it makes...
That's Cagliari.
Yeah.
Carthage, Sicily. There should be one there on Sicily called Moita, but hey ho, right?
Colonies. Here comes the Assyrian Empire. Never mind, it's the Babylonian Median. It's the Persian Empire. Wow, that's big. Ah, the Buddha was just enlightened. Who's the Buddha? This guy who sat under a tree for so long that he figured out how to ignore the fact that we're all dying. You can make a religion out of this.
But yeah.
Oops, China just broke, but while it was breaking, Confucius was figuring out how to have good
wait till
morals.
we get to Rome.
Ah, the Greeks just had the idea of thinking about stuff. And right over here, Alexander just had the idea of conquering the entire Persian Empire. It's a great idea. He was great.
Egypt.
And now he's dead. Hopefully the rest of the gang will be able to share the empire evenly between
there
them.
go
Knock knock,
Ptolemy.
it's
What did I
Chandragupta.
say?
He says, get the hell out of here. Will you get the hell out of here if I give you 500 elephants? Okay, thanks, bye. Time to conquer all of India.
Right.
Most of India. But what about this part? That's the Tamil Kings. No one conquers the Tamil Kings. Who are the Tamil Kings? Merchants, probably. And they've got spices. Who would like to buy the spices? Me, said the Arabians, swiftly buying it and selling it to the rest of the world. Hey, China put itself back together again, with good morals as their main philosophy. Actually, they have three main philosophies. Out here, the horse nomads run wild and free, and they would like to ransack your city. Let's check the Greekification levels of the Greekified kingdoms. Greekification overload. Bye, said the Parthians. Bye, said the Jews. Hi, said the Parthians, taking over the entire place. Hey, said the Romans, eating the entire Mediterranean for breakfast. Thanks for invading our homeland, said the Jews, who were starting to get tired of people invading their homeland. Hi, everything's great, said some guy who seems to be getting very popular and is then arrested and killed for being too popular, which only makes him more popular. You can make a religion out of this. Want silk? Now you can buy it from China. They just made a brand new road to the world. Or you can get their own water. Sick, new trade route.
Right, thank you for listening.
Said India,
and
accidentally spreading their
now
route.
time to go and
Yeah.
take my girl out.
Take care of the dog.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, yes, this will conclude our history themed stream, I guess. Stoomperk Dog is standing about a meter from me, clearly anticipating, the what is to come. Doof, 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 doof. Time for my presentation. Yeah, fucking right. I don't know what I'd do a talk like if I had to do a 2-hour talk about something, if sure as fuck wouldn't be history, it'd be like music production or football or Gwent matters. Pepe laugh. I don't know. I could talk about a bunch of the TA prep from back in the day where Gwent was actually, semi decent. But anyway, yeah, right. Well, with all that being said, kind of vague waves of the hand. Yeah, I don't know when I'll be back. Sometime with Scuffed Rim, probably. For those who don't know, that's the Spanglish Skyrim thing that's going all over the place, but it's kind of interesting. Anyway, but yes, with all that being said, thanks for hanging around, folks. I will save the VOD. And yeah, take care. Peace.